Hello, everyone. It is Megwyn White and Bill Parravano here on the third episode of New Paradigms in Healing Therapies. And as for myself, I am up in Cleveland here, celebrating Thanksgiving, Christmas, and two family birthdays in a week. So we're compressing everything into a week. So that's what's going on. But on this end, this is my daughter, Evie. So she's going to be riding shotgun with me today, or until something gets more interesting and sitting on Dad's lap.
Nice.
So we'll have a conversation today. So probably it'll be a rated G.
No
swearing today. So, and Megwyn.
Yes. Shall we introduce our topic for today?
Yeah, we'll check in. Where are you at? How are things going today for you?
Well, things are interesting. We're living in very interesting times. Mm-hmm. And I think something that feels like it's very much running through the collective mind, at least what I'm feeling or sensing, is a lot of people questioning or wondering, what is the reality? We have a president as a reality TV star now. We have, all this social media, but not as much connection happening. And when we had discussed about what we would want to talk about today, I thought one thing that would be interesting, especially since you and I are just beginning this conversation, this dialogue, and this relationship through this medium, is something that I learned or that I gleaned from going to a workshop with Annie Lala and Eben Pagan. It was a couple of years ago. It was 4 years ago. And it really stuck with me. And it was a frame around relationships that I feel is really helpful, and something that I'm trying to work with in my own life and explore. And it basically is the idea that in order for relationships or collaborations to be sustainable, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a romantic relationship, that one has to be able to identify what the third energy is, kind of like your baby over there. Right. And that whenever we come together, that there is this third energy, but we don't always identify what it is. And so it goes kind of unnamed, and in going unnamed, it also sometimes goes uncared for. Mm-hmm. And I've definitely experienced in my own life, in relationship, the kind of death of that third energy. And it's very hard. It's very challenging. And I've also experienced the opposite, the blossoming of that third energy, and the, evolution of the partnership actually blossoming something that was never there to begin with, that only could really form between the two people. So I brought it up because I thought there's something here blossoming between us. And both you and I, sort of on and off these conversations, have been, becoming curious about what is that? What is that energy? And so I've just figured, like, maybe this is a good topic of discussion amidst this chaos, this chaotic energy that we have going on right now, in looking at partnership and collaboration and just friendship in that space of what is that third energy, and how can we parent that third energy in a way so that, like, as you probably have a lot to talk about around this, around just being a parent, and how there is certain sacrifices that we make, for that third energy. And there's also kind of shedding of our own ego in order for that third energy to be fully expressed and realized. because it has its own, it kind of has its own life. So that was what I was interested in talking about today.
Cool. Let's do it.
Maybe if you want to share like how that relates to being a parent.
Yeah. Well, what comes to mind when you're talking about that third energy or that third person in a relationship, think of it like the harmonics that come together. Like if you have two sounds, two tones, and you put those tones together, it sounds very different than if you listen to those two tones apart.
Right.
And that essentially you have, for me, a male vibration, for you, a female vibration, that when it comes together, there's a different sound that is essentially created as a result of the merging of those two energies. A conversation, a relationship, spending time together, going for coffee, like whatever it is, you can name it whatever it is. And all of a sudden it starts to like harmonize in some way or not. And then can be something very different than the two individuals. I believe what ends up happening is this was something I was very guilty of for a very long time, is thinking that I was still going to retain my individuality in the context of a relationship. I think there was too much ego going around that when I got into relationship with someone, whoever that was, there was not allowing that harmonization or those merging of the energies to let's see what happens. And that doesn't necessarily have to be male and a female. That could be friends.
Absolutely.
Hang out with buddies, parents, children. It happens whenever we get in relationship with someone else. And what is that? Like my experience when it's just my daughter and I is a very different experience than when we're around other people, because it's a different harmonization of what's going on in that relationship. And over the past probably 6 months, there's been more of an intentional experience. Like a lot of my questions when I first start spending time with someone are, well, what would you like to experience? Like what like in
like that.
Our time together,
yes,
what would you like to experience?
Yes.
Whatever that is. Do you want to experience fun?
Yeah.
Do you want it to be serious? Do you want it to be, we're just going to talk and communicate and connect on like a deep level? Do you just want it to be light and we'll just joke and laugh and stuff like that? So it's, I think having more of an intention for like, well, what would you like that experience to be? What would I like that experience to be? And let's see.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's really cool. It's cool to start asking those questions, and it's also has, for me, it's been up-leveling the people that I'm associating with, because the person that I asked that question, that all of a sudden it's like either can't answer it or is actually freaked out by it. Yeah. Then it's like, that's not the level that I want to.
Not gonna work.
Yeah, it's not gonna work. And it's okay. It doesn't make anybody bad or wrong. It just, for me, I've spent a lot of time that wasn't intentional, that wasn't purposeful. Yeah. What ends up happening is, you aren't clear on what you want. You end up with what you get. Yeah. And sometimes that could be fun. Sometimes that can't be fun, but it's one of those things that it makes, for me, it feels like I'm more in charge or more in control of what's happening in my life, what kind of time I want to spend.
Yeah, I think I feel a similar way. I think as I've gotten older, I've wanted to, create more conscious connections or conscious containers for my relationships.
Hmm.
And um and I think a part of it is just that, our hearts get broken. We have relationships that collapse or fall apart, and it's like it's very hard, to go through
Hmm.
those experiences. And so it's definitely something that kind of moving forward in my own life, I definitely, right at the beginning, I feel like why not start it off, in that space of, and I love the idea of asking that invitation of what do you want to experience, and what do I want to experience, and can we come to an agreement around those things and create a container for that to actually happen.
Hmm.
When there's this kind of question or doubt, or, you know, um, I think that that's when the parents kind of have left the building, and
Yeah.
where there's this innocence that wants to. I think when two people ever come together, I really do believe this. There's a magnetic pull,
Hmm.
and that if one takes the time, one can create something and a space for that relationship to potentially flourish.
Hmm.
But I think that too often we just don't take the time, and we just sort of let whatever random things happen when we come together, arise. I love the metaphor that you gave of the two notes and this harmonic tone. I
Hmm.
think it's so true that, there's the question of what do we want to experience, and there's the randomness of what's forming between us, but
Hmm.
it's in the listening, in the like really listening in and tuning into what is the song that is forming here, or is this just dissonance?
Hmm.
Some people love dissonance. I think that that's a particular form of relating,
Hmm.
like it's like I could never handle dissonant music, going to like mosh pits and just really heavy metal. It just wasn't my thing. But for some people, that is like a turn on.
Hmm.
And you have to be aware, I think, of that space, and whether you want to create a harmonic, which is a glorious thing, inside of a relationship. I think it can be really fun. And uh, and I think there's so much within our culture, especially because we're now living in such a reality TV type of culture, that it's almost assumed that, that relationships won't last. People say true love doesn't really exist, and there's this kind of apathy and negativity around relationship in the popular culture, because people have, for whatever reason, agreed that dissonance is kind of cool, you know?
Hmm.
And I think, sure, it can be cool for other people, but for me, I really love the idea of cultivating and creating, that symbiotic song. Um, and I think that that takes knowing yourself, like understanding your own note and the energy that you want to play, and also learning how to sync up with another, and play with another.
Hmm. I'd like to take a moment and connect the dots for some of the people that may be watching this,
Yes, let's do that.
realizing that when there's a harmonization, when you have a clear intent on what you would like to experience in relationship, there's a letting down and letting go of tension in the nervous
Mm.
system, in the body. And that in and of itself provides a container for healing.
Oh,
So
I
like
love that.
we have this, we're have this talk, we've been meeting 3 times about these new paradigms in healing therapies. And I don't know if, because we see so much of this stuff on reality TV shows and things like that, that they don't see the relationship, or because it's going to end, or whatever the idea is of it. There's not this concept that you and I can meet and create this container for each other to get that nurturing and support and love and whatever that is, that we can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that, it's the unconditional love and support that we wanted from our parents growing up, that we didn't get for whatever reason. And I mean, I can see it right now, as my daughter's 3. And there's this, no matter how much I try to be there to support her, there's going to be some unmet need that is going to be created just because I'm not perfect and she has things that I couldn't possibly guess that she would need for me to support her at. Well, she's going to go into her life, and being that model for her, creating that container for her that she can create that with someone else, into her life when she starts having relationships several decades down the road, hopefully. But having that,
well, maybe sooner,
but but having that experience with me as her father, now she's going to look for that same type of experience in relationship. That's going to be her, the lighthouse she's going to be looking for when things get crazy, as opposed to maybe some other less than favorable experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this third energy exists even in casual relationships.
Sure.
Like, so just kind of getting into that habit. I mean, even if you're talking to some, who knows, like I'm going into some very random thing, but a telemarketer on the phone, and you just put out, what is the third energy? Is it that I need to hang up? Or is it that, you never know.
That could totally freak somebody out. I mean, but in terms of sales, like from a selling standpoint, when I talk to people about what's going on with their knees, they have knee pain, whatever it is. There's some people that I totally harmonize with, that, it works really well. And then other people, it's like, I really don't want to talk to them. And it
absolutely.
Some people are in so much fear. The level of fear is so great about getting over knee pain, that they don't trust me. They don't trust themselves. They don't want to spend the money. They don't want to spend the time. They don't want to put the energy or effort into it. And it's like, after all those levels of distrust, mistrust, that's not the container that I am willing to create to be able to help somebody. They have to show up with, the desire to get out of pain, the trajectory that they really want to get help and support. They believe that their body can heal themselves, or they believe their body can heal their knees. And just the willingness to put forth the effort. And if someone I'm talking to can't put forth that, well, then there's no resonance. There's no harmonics with what's happening.
Well, so much of that comes back to like values too. I think just in the root, if a person doesn't really even value the idea of that third energy or that harmonic, which is, I think what you're talking about, you mention all of those things, is that person is kind of trapped in their own pain, and when you're trapped in your own pain, you can't contribute to the harmony that wants to form between two people. But I love the idea of like spreading this concept so that it could potentially become more normal and a way that we can start to imagine, interacting and meeting new people, and right away being like, what's our third energy and how can we find that? How can we nurture that, instead of it just being a sort of random thing? And there is beauty in the mystery, obviously. It's not like we have to, name everything, but I think that there is something really gorgeous in, kind of finding that container and finding that that common seed, for what wants to blossom. I mean, for you and I, we've I mean, maybe we can like mulch on this a little bit, because you and I, we definitely have a resonance, and we have something that's forming and budding, and we've been, feeling into that, and some of the things are starting to come through, or like eventually we feel like maybe we'll do some kind of retreat together, bringing people together, but we don't yet know exactly what that looks like. But there's some beauty in just even having that inquiry, and kind of going into that curiosity of what could form between us.
And I believe there's also this place of being able to notice this resonance in other people when you get more quiet with yourself. We've known each other for 4 years, 5 years, somewhere around in there, approximately. Yeah. But we've not connected like this up until the past couple months. So there's this place where, for me, it's been getting more quiet in myself, doing less and being more, and sitting back and just being okay with the quiet or the silence. And the silence is actually the space between the notes. That's what creates music.
Oh, yes.
So if you have, piano keys, like if you just hit a frequency is going to continue to play. But the moment that you break that frequency and there's a gap in that frequency and you come in with another frequency, then that creates music. Well, and I was guilty of this, well, I probably still am, but maybe not as much, that this place where it's like I'm always pushing, I'm always like trying to make something happen. It's like I never shut off the frequency. So there's no gap to listen, to go, I've just spoken with 5 people today. All 5 of those people are a great opportunity to continue conversations with. If I'm pushing, but if
I lost you there for a moment. Like your phone.
Yeah. Are we back?
Yeah.
You remember I was saying before the call that if someone calls me on my phone, it'll also ring on my iPad?
Yes.
It just and then it rang on my iPad, so you cut it off. So okay. So those same 5 people, if I'm really quiet, first of all, I probably wouldn't have conversations with that many people. And then of the couple people that I do have conversations with, there's more like a settling in and noticing within myself, do I feel like this panic or urge to continue that conversation? Or do I feel this ease within myself that it's like, oh, well, I could let this sit for a couple days or a couple weeks and return to the conversation and there wouldn't be pressure. And that's what I felt talking with you. There was like this, whatever post you put on social media that I responded to, and we had like this connection over it, talking about different concepts for healing. And then we just got on a call and it was just fun. It was just fun to talk about that. And there was no like agenda. I didn't have this idea that, we're going to start this recorded thing or we're going to do anything other than just get on a call and just talk about fun stuff that I like talking about and you like talking about.
Yeah. And then, so we started off a little loose, and then I kind of brought in this whole thing of, I want some frame for us to be able to dialogue about. So that was
Yes.
kind of like an example, I would say, of like, that was me saying, okay, in order to really feel safe, in order to really, be able to express myself and to blossom, like I just need that thematic, and these are things that kind of, I think, come through as you're relating. You get more and more, refined around whatever that third energy, needs. But I totally agree with you around the idea of the silence. I think that that's why, like, having a meditative practice is so important to sustaining anything, but particularly relationship, because it's so important to be able to find that space of silence just with yourself, so that I think actually then the universe then fills that space up, with the fullness of whatever the reality actually is. And when we're not able to be in that space of silence, then we're filling it up with all of this artificial stuff that in the end doesn't feel very good. And then we look for another, then we look for another relationship, another hit of something that feels like it's going to fill up that space and that gap. And I think that, as we evolve in our relating, and especially as you go deeper, I think, into this meditative space and cultivating that silence and that relationship with just that emptiness, the source, the mystery, whatever we want to call it, that we touch more the innocence. I'm going to say, yeah, I feel it as an innocence. So when I go into that meditative space of that silence, I feel like I'm also connecting with the part of me that is very vulnerable, delicate, the baby, that baby part. And I feel that as I've grown older, and, in the beginning, I remember I'd have to force myself to meditate, and it was hard to meditate. I just, it was challenging. And anyway, through the years, oops, I think I lost you there. Okay. Anyway, through the years, it's become like, the lifeblood. Like, I can't imagine not having that space to connect with. But the natural evolution has been that the more I get in contact with that space, the more picky, the more refined I need to also be in my relating with other people. Yeah. Like I can't just go, this is just me speaking about this, but just going out to clubs where there's just loud music playing and you can't hear anything of what's going on and there's no intimacy. I used to be able to do that when I was in my early 20s and thought that was really fun. But it's not as fun anymore. It's like I feel there's something that in my relating, I want to create something. I find that's much more of a turn on to me than just kind of dancing around and, looking good with someone.
Yeah. I think the piece that when you're talking about that innocence, that connection, that excitement that happens out of that connection, what really opened up for me was being curious. Like me, like really sitting in this space and thinking like, oh, I have this really cool interactive movie that I get to experience. And it's like, okay, Megwyn, what do you really like? Like, what would you like to experience?
Oh my God, that feels so good, Bill.
Right. Well, like, what would you like to experience right now? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that part of you that I could if it was like you can have any piece of candy you want, anything, and all you need to do is tell me what that is.
Aw.
And I would be more than happy to give you that piece of candy. Isn't that cool? And I think
Fucking awesome.
Yeah, she's out. But there's this place that there's so many layers of shit that we can't get through, because it's like, because you have all this socialized stuff about being a woman and can't ask for what you want, and you have to be proper and act a certain way. So then there's layers of stuff that desire, that want, whatever it is, can't get through. And then over here on my end as a guy, I'm like, oh, I got to be cool, and I got to, dress a certain way or look a certain way or act a certain way, that it's like, if I'm not acting that certain way, then there's layers of stuff on my end. So it's like my layers of shit is talking to your layers of shit. And it's like we ended up really doing stuff that we don't even really want to be doing.
Well, I don't think we're doing stuff that we don't want to be doing, but
I'm just talking about like,
in general, in a kind of more of a general way. Because I feel very, I feel very met by you.
Bingo.
And
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing the average person out there has this, their layers of stuff is meeting my layers of, each other's layers of stuff. And now we're really not talking. We're really not communicating. We're talking at the person, not with the person.
You know what I think that really is? And I think it honestly, so much of it comes down to when people struggle with that, I don't think they have a practice. I don't think that there's a real practice of meditation, of like finding that silence, because when someone doesn't have that space of silence and that really deep connection with their own core, they don't know what it is that they want. They're not able to hold that kind of space. That's just too scary. It just, feels overwhelming. The only way one can interact in that space is through a mask, through kind of ego.
There's one thing I'd like to offer for someone listening to this is, if you've ever fallen asleep and you wake up like 3 a.m. and you hear that clock ticking in the middle of the night that you never heard during the day, your baseline during the day, your nervous system, tension in your nervous system, the white noise in your nervous system is higher. So you never get to hear like those little noises in your house until your nervous system has dropped down, you've gotten sleep at night, and now it's like, oh wow, I could hear that clock ticking in the other room.
That's great.
Or what's that little scratching? I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
And I use the same analogy for people in relationship. They've never had that support or that quiet in their nervous system. So they can actually have that contrast. That it's like describing to a person, a blind person who's never seen what color is. You can't describe what it's like to connect with another person if they're so into their own experience. Their noise level is so high, and they're thinking by doing more is actually going to get them closer to what they want, or that feeling of being filled or fulfilled in relationship with another person.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I think that's very true. And I think you can't make someone, get into that kind of space. I think that sometimes that's always the saddest, when you meet someone and you feel that there's this magnetic energy and this connection, and that there is so much noise happening that you just can't meet. I've had a few experiences like that, and it's always a bit sad when that has to devolve, because it eventually will, especially
Mhm.
as two people grow in different ways. But I think also sometimes tragedy can help to bring a person into,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I don't think that it's necessary, but I think that oftentimes life will bring us these kind of experiences where all of a sudden our breath is taken away.
Yeah.
We have no more room to just, we have to stop and just be with what actually is.
Mhm.
And we can't just fill in that space.
Mhm.
um, I think if a person can go into that and then, stop and have that realization that, wow, like I actually have to be in this emptiness,
Mhm.
then, one can cultivate it. And, we're always cultivating it more and more. I'm not saying that, I have a meditative practice, but I feel like I can obviously go much deeper and richer in that, and just in relationship, as a whole. But I like the metaphor that you said, though, of the sounds. I think that is so true, and something that I realize that I want to cultivate more in myself is more connection to nature,
Mm.
and just a better relationship with nature, because I feel programmed oftentimes just in my own life, and sometimes because of the technology and this kind of immediacy of the relating, that we're not in touch with the rhythms,
Mhm.
of nature. So yeah.
There's a piece on that hits home for me. Nature is baseline. People love going camping and getting out of their routine, or
Mm,
getting into nature so they can feel so calm and relaxed. And usually in those first couple days, when you're inundated with all this electrical, phones and computers and things like that, technology, that when you get into nature the first couple days, it's like you'll sleep. You'll sleep. Like,
yeah.
I've done it where I've slept 12, 14 hours for a couple of nights in a row. It's like, why am I so tired? And it's because the nervous system is at such a high level that it's finally dropping down, and it's getting to that baseline. And
Mm,
most people don't. Okay, this is a pet peeve of mine, is people want to be closer to nature, so they move out of the city, and then they recreate the city in nature. They build it. They build like the big house with the gate around it.
or like Burning Man. Well, it's
Yeah.
not really nature. It's sort of like you're out, sort of out of the normal paradigm in a way, right? But this is just my pet peeve with Burning Man. I love Burning Man, but
Mm.
like you go to Burning Man and there's just all this electronic music just everywhere, like inundated with it, and you can't get it. You can't really escape it.
Mm.
And I always wondered about that. This I'm sidetracking a little bit.
Yeah. I
We're
that's
talking
what
about our pet peeves.
Yeah, I got it. The whole thing. My whole Burning Man pet peeve is they talk about leaving no trace,
Yeah.
but then for 300 miles around the site of Burning Man is all the shit that's fallen off of the trucks and the RVs as it's blowing everywhere, and it's all
Yeah.
in the dumpsters for several hundred miles around Burning Man. And it's like, if you truly want to embody leaving no trace, then you're going to go in there a minimal amount. You're going to leave with a minimal amount, and you're going to clean up after yourself, and not just transfer it into someone else's responsibility. But anyhow, that's my own thing. But the piece about nature is getting to that baseline
Hmm.
of feeling really calm and relaxed.
I'm reading my little monkey.
Yeah, there you go. Calm and relaxed, and then have a conversation with someone, and then have this experience with another person from that curious place of just like two humans relating, like, I'm just interested to hear what you have to say. I love to hear your perspective on the world, whether I agree with it or disagree with it. I'd like to have the experience of how
Yeah.
Megwyn thinks.
Well, I love that. And I think that's not always easy to find with every single person that we're with.
Agreed?
Um, and, and also I think that, we all bring our baggage from old relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we don't, inquire early on enough around what is this third energy, that what does end up happening is this projection. Well, the last woman I was with, did this to me, and you're going to do that, or those kinds of things start playing out. So, but it's funny. It's like I think that some people think it's sort of weird, because I meet new people and I'm sort of more direct with it and say, I'm really interested in finding out what this third energy is between us, and they're kind of like, it's sort
you're
of,
too powerful.
it sounds weird.
Well, no, I mean, has your experience been with guys where you've asked?
Some guys, I think it has to, one has to be, I've had experiences where I said very early on, that I want to make sure that, we're in agreement on what is this third energy. So it's not just kind of random, because I don't really feel safe in randomness in that way. And that sometimes hasn't always been received as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's like, well, it should be random. We're just meeting. We're just connecting, But I think that, yeah, it's kind of a new concept. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think I can imagine from a woman's perspective, you just want to have an idea of what the intent is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you have an idea of what to expect.
Yes.
And that can really, I believe, can allow a woman to let her guard down.
Well, the thing that I like about you so much, and that I find oftentimes is rare in a lot of the men that I meet. And I think it's just a programming thing, because I don't think men's essence want to be like this. But I feel like with men, this is my own experience, may or may not be true. But I oftentimes feel like men are either trying to connect with me on a sexual level,
Mm-hmm.
and once they figure out whether that's going to happen or not, and if it's not going to happen, they kind of will literally just drop the whole thing altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's unfortunate, because I think, as a woman, I have a lot to offer, just as a friend, as a person, as a human being connecting. So I don't understand oftentimes why that is. Maybe it's because as a woman, it's a little bit scary to have that kind of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, I mean, you're a guy.
Yeah, well, I am. Well, there's this place where I think that's where their layers of stuff is trying to communicate with your layers of stuff, but you've kind of moved away your layers of stuff. So now their layers of stuff is really communicating with you, and it's like, whoa, she's not playing like the game.
Right.
So why would I spend time with this? I'm not playing the game. It's not a game.
Yeah.
So that there's no value of it. There's no value in it for them. That's how I would see it. And I was actually going to share the same thing. I've had a couple experiences in the past several months of women in my life that it's like, when I was, just straightforward and like, I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know what this is going to look like. Yeah, we click on this level. However, if you want to have this definition of this is going to be like here on out, we're going to be like this item or this thing or this exclusive, essentially kind of doing this, well, her layers of stuff, speaking with where I'm at. Where I was it's like, I don't know. I don't even know. We got to get through some stuff first to see if, how do we really connect? And being in that place, yeah, we have this special connection and it's fun and all that. However, what is that really going to look like? I'm not sure. I can't tell you. So there's that. And I've also had another woman who was more interested in social media in her cell phone than she was speaking with me. That didn't work out that well either. Because it's like, I'm much more quality over quantity. I'd much rather have like this really awesome, 10, 15 minutes that we get on a phone call and just really connect and have a good time, good experience, rather than spending several hours in the same room where their attention is somewhere else other than with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's no fun.
Well, it's also a lot sexier to be with a man that isn't needing that sort of ego hit, from like me as a woman. Like to be with a man, and I feel this with certain types of men, and it actually has. There doesn't need to even be any kind of like sexual desire or anything like that. Like I felt it with certain types of men that are just at a certain level in their spiritual evolution, and they move a little slower. There's a kind of respect for time and connection and intimacy. And it's amazing talking with these kind of men. I mean, I just open up. I feel like I feel more turned on, than with the hottest guy, on the planet or something. Like it's so interesting to kind of look at that space of relating. But I do think that it is with men that have cultivated their energy a little bit more, and there's a kind of respect for the opposite, the polarity, and they know that they need that also to stimulate and I think as a woman, I need that masculine energy also to stimulate my feminine, whether it's with someone that I'm romantic with or not. And I hope that we can evolve more as a people to have more of that kind of, that kind of relating. But I think there is so much programming in our culture to really look at people like Donald Trump, she's a 10, or, to rate people. And
go ahead.
Oh,
I may have to leave for a
oh, that's
moment.
okay. Yeah.
She's good for the moment.
Yeah. Well, all I want to say is that, I feel very respected and very well received by you. And I feel like there's something in our intention, in our relating, that allows me to feel more relaxed and more at ease, and it feels really rich and valuable. And I really appreciate our connection.
Yeah, me too. I very much appreciate our connection.
Yay.
Thank you. And I think what's really important here, and for the women that are watching this, there's a certain degree of openness that needs to be like a certain baseline level of openness that a woman needs to show up with. that allows for it to happen.
Mm.
That I think there's so many women, and this is regardless if you're in a relationship or not, or whether you're interested or not. And I know there's a lot of dynamics out there that I'm maybe speaking out of turn with, as far as like when women get whistled at or catcalled or stuff like that, that makes it difficult.
Yeah.
However, when you have the opportunity, you practicing that or being in that space of like, you know, just being open to communicating, being open to talking, and just being curious in the very same way that a man may be curious about you.
I think that that's also something that one can cultivate. And maybe I can parlay that into just sharing with our viewers that every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am going to be doing a meditation, a tantric practice, a tantric meditation for women out there that feel that there has been, any kind of block or disconnect between their sexual center, or the root, right? That animal root center, and the voice. So I think that what you experience with a lot of women in that sort of, locking, or that not being open, what you're saying, is a byproduct of so many women having had so many abuses and feeling so judged and so shamed, either whether they're too sexual or they're not sexual enough, or they're not pretty or they're too pretty, can be anything. And all of that, it's kind of, I really think of it as that a woman in particular, I do feel is like a flower, and that we blossom, when we're in relationship with ourselves, when we're in right relationship with ourselves, there's a certain dimension of blossoming. And then we blossom even more when we're in that partnership and that relationship with a man that respects us, and that takes, that is caring, and that can hold all of the emotions. I think so many women have been hurt in the past for, not having that root to themselves, like not having that rooted connection to the emotions. And so the emotions are shamed, and the throat is literally blocking that ability to express the emotions fully, and to feel them in an embodied way. And that shrillness that men experience when a woman is not in the root of her emotional essence is that shame and that disconnect. So as women, I feel that it's our responsibility, just on our own as an independent being, to bridge that connection. And we can, as women, and we can come together with other women to help foster that, because it's very vulnerable to reveal and to share yourself, and to share your femininity, especially in a culture and a world that has not respected that, and does not hold that as a divine, So if women are out there that are watching and are interested in doing something that is supporting that, every Monday at 6 p.m. We'll be doing a meditation, and maybe we can link to it inside of this video.
Sure.
And you can check in on that. But that's something that I feel has been really helping me in holding the space for other women to connect, into that authenticity of the emotions, has definitely helped me feel more safe in sharing those parts in myself with others.
Nice.
But, yeah.
So how you feeling right now?
I feel really good. I feel like we're starting to like stir, some really wonderful things, and it just feels really good to be able to share with a man and to feel seen and heard, and I'm sure people that are watching this are also feeling that, because I think that it's sometimes really rare. I think that what's beautiful about our connection is that we're not just sharing data, information, and we're trying to fill up our heads with more knowledge, that the knowledge that we're experiencing is actually in the quality of the connection that's emerging. And that can't be quantified. But it certainly creates more space internally. And I feel inspired, around that space. Yeah.
And I'm curious if the people that are listening can leave feedback as to if what they're feeling in this video, how their experience in relationship is the same or different. I think that would be interesting kind of feedback to hear, like, because using this as like a template or a baseline as to how they can begin communicating in their own lives. And
I love that.
Well, that space, like, guys out there, or even women out there, that moment you can play back in the video when I asked the question, Megwyn, what would you like to experience? And being curious. Yeah, see that little piece right there. There's this lighting up. There's this changing of her energy, of her body language. Her smile lights up, and that's like the really, really friggin' awesome experience to have in relating with another person. And if you're communicating on a level that isn't evoking those types of responses in a conversation, then you're speaking to, you guys aren't truly speaking to each other. You're speaking to layers of stuff.
Yes.
And that, it's like, if you could use that as like a baseline, that's like, wow.
It's powerful.
It's a good stuff. And for a guy asking a woman that is great and awesome. And then for a woman to ask a guy that too. Have a guy light up. It's like, for me, I realized that I was choosing people to be in my life that didn't appreciate me, that didn't listen to me, didn't value my time. And I just thought that was baseline, and that's who.
Right.
That's just to be expected. Now, when I slow down and I listen, and it's like, well, if I'm not feeling valued and appreciated and listened to, well, then I'm gone. And if that will lead into something for you to talk about for a few minutes, I got to take care of my daughter here. Just
okay. I'm gonna be talking to myself, which is not quite as fun. But are you coming back, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Just wait for you to come back. It's a little more fun to talk to you. That we bring. Oof. This is Rishi, everybody. He's a very good little boy. I wonder if I can pause it. No. Bill.
Okay.
Oh, so I wanted to just parlay, because I didn't want to say this when you weren't here. It just
Uh-huh.
wasn't the same. One thing that I want to like make a distinction is that I think some men will use this idea of what is it that you want? Can I give you? You know, they'll say that sort of thing, but they're not really genuine.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of part of the game. And
Mm-hmm.
it could be a very effective way of playing the game, you know, and also sort of appealing to whatever they think that they want, and sort of painting this
Mm-hmm.
picture of, you know, yes, I want to create. Men do this, and I think that, and I'm sure women do too, but I think this is a common sort of game that men do play. And with you, I feel it's genuine, and it feels playful, and I think that, you know, inside of relationship, you know, we have to like make sure that um, you know, you get to know someone well enough to discover, do they really mean that, or is that something that they're just saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because it can be very dangerous to also, you know, open up too quickly to a
Mm-hmm.
man, because when they're committing that kind of thing to you,
Yeah.
and, you know,
Yeah.
creating that space. So that's something, you know, that a lot of us women have experienced. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
almost every woman, I'm sure, has experienced at some point or another a man playing that kind of game of like, what is it that you want? How can I create this for you? And, you know, there's this kind of build
Yeah.
up at the beginning, and they come on very strong.
Yeah.
So, you know, it takes time to see if there's a real genuine desire to create that kind of space.
Yes. And I also believe women are way more intuitive and can feel into these things way better than men can.
We can, but look, a woman is pent up, wanting to blossom in her beauty, in her radiance, and her
Okay.
femininity. And, you know, especially in our modern world, she's working, she's like doing the, you know, 9 to 5 thing, and she's in that kind of anxious nervous system space.
Okay.
And so you get a man that comes along and is like, honey, I want to like let you completely relax, and, you know,
Okay.
and
Got it.
and she wants to completely relax, you know.
Right.
So there's something that happens, and I'm saying because I've fallen a victim to this kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, you know, and I'm a very intuitive woman. I think I've gotten better in my intuition, but, you know, it's almost like, you know, there's this desire to just, we want to unfurl, actually. We want to let these things go. Um, so if a man does come along and, you know, kind of creates that energy,
Mm-hmm.
um, but then, you know, we start to notice, well, his actions are saying something different. I think that
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's where, you know, as a woman, we have to be a little bit more aware and conscious of, is it consistent with the behavior? You know, if the man, for instance, wants to just jump right into bed with you, this is my own personal opinion about this, but jump right into bed with you like that first time you're meeting, and, you know, and I've had this happen before, like many times, like, you know, man, the first time you meet them, they want to have this connection, and they're telling you that they love you on the first time that you're
Oh,
even
yeah.
with them. This is common, you know, this happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so I think that one thing that I've been playing with lately is that um, I really have this kind of waiting period with a man.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I actually have been celibate for a while now, like a little bit over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just have been playing with this idea of like, if this man really genuinely wants to get to know me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're not going to need to jump into bed with me like overnight. And if that's the prerequisite for getting to know me, then it's probably not going to work out.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's kind of like and I'm not saying that that has to be the way it is across the board, but like, I personally want to have relationships with men, whether it's sexual or non-sexual, that are really fruitful. And, you know, and so I think that sometimes if we go into that sexual energy, we're playing in those layers before we've really established the container.
Yep.
And it can be a little dangerous, and it can also be a little murky, a little muddy. And then the projections come in, you know, and then the third energy that you had, that potential, is kind of lost, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think if you're really focusing on, or you're really having those conscious conversations around that third energy, that third piece, listening, being present to all of that, then I think that's really gonna cut a lot of that ambiguity out of it. You know, if you're already having this conversation about that third entity or that third person in the relationship, and you're holding that as being like what you're working on, what you're working towards, the conversations that you're having, then that's first and foremost, as opposed to two individuals.
And it can be really fun, because like all of a sudden I feel the energy getting a little bit heavy, but like, you know, I think in the higher dimension of intimacy and relating, you know, we can have the experience of eros, you know, the erotic can be inside of everything that we're experiencing. You don't have to have sex in order to have that kind of erotic energy. You know, it can be, again, in the quality of the listening. I think you have to be a connoisseur on some level of like experiencing the reality in order to kind of find this sort of space. And I think it's been kind of dumbed out of a lot of our senses because of the kind of, you know, culture that we're living in. But it still exists. And when you find it, it's so good. It's just so amazing. And yeah, once you find that, you don't really want anything less than that. No.
Bar goes that high and you won't settle.
No.
I get it.
No.
Well, we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah.
I haven't kept track of the time today, but
we did good. I think we did an hour. Yeah, let's see.
Hour-ish,
yeah.
Cool.
But that was great. So we'll go ahead and sign off.
Well, let's kind of tie it up.
Yes, please.
So for Megwyn, for you had mentioned about on Mondays at what time?
On Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to have an embodied weekly grounding nature practice for women to help bridge the connection between the voice and sexual center. And it's a telephone call. Nobody's going to be seen. It's really something that's very anonymous. It's really just creating a space for you to experience an embodied practice. And we'll put the link in the videos because otherwise you won't know exactly what it is. And you'll see a link to the meditation. And also there's a particular tool that you'll use inside of the meditation. That and people can contact me also through my website, which is Embody Voice, EMBODY voice.com. Yeah.
And they can reach me at customer service at thekneepainguru.com, as well as go to my website, thekneepainguru.com. If they'd like to chat, there's a place to sign up for an appointment to my online calendar. They could do that. If there's some way I can help them out, whether it be with knees or some other way, I'd be happy to see what I could do. And let's see, our next call is going to be next Monday.
Next Monday.
Awesome.
Yes.
I'll be back in the office.
Woohoo!
Have my normal background. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And well, maybe next week we'll have the live streaming down by then.
Yes. Bye.
Okay.